Clinton Yates, Pablo Torre, Frank Isola, great to have you here. I go to you guys for soft, okay? So was this soft? According to everybody, this was soft. The Porzingis ejection. Technical one, punching air in the second quarter after calling for a foul on an all-ball block that got somebody to. Technical two for escalation in the skirmish between Doncic and Morris. Third man in, forearm. It was 71-66 Dallas lead at the time of ejection. Clippers won by 8. Frank Isola, around the horn to you. Did the refs rob Dallas and everybody of a game here?
I really think that they did, kicking him out with 21 minutes to go in this game. And they talk about escalation. Look at Porzingis. He is walking slowly over to Luka Doncic. Only until that point when Marcus Morris goes back again at Doncic does Porzingis step in. The league wants the players and the coaches to act as peacemakers. I believe in that moment that Kristaps Porzingis was doing exactly that. I thought it was unjust to toss him out of the game.
Can you be a peacemaker and also an escalator? Let me ask you that, Frank Isola.
Clearly, that's what the refs thought. But again, Tony, if I'm Luka Doncic and I look at Porzingis, he's slowly walking over there. You might be thinking, man, you're not in a rush to really defend me here. So if he wanted to escalate the situation, why wouldn't he sprint over to where Marcus Morris and Doncic were? He walked real slowly. Morris went at him again. Then he stepped in between them. To me, that's a peacemaker.
Pablo Torre, did the refs blow this for Dallas and for everybody watching this game?
They blew the call, but they didn't rob us of a great game, Tony. The game that happened after that was still really good, to the credit of the Mavericks and Luka Doncic, who got to the rim at will all game, and to the discredit of the Clippers, who, despite having Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, could not stop Luka Doncic. But the blowing of the call, I agree with Frank on this. The entire job of a referee is to interpret the spirit of the law. Every foul must be adjudicated based on the context, the time of the game, where on the court it was happening. And in that case, when you get to a technical, the first tee actually was more objectionable to me than the second. And once you establish that, okay, hey, we're going to call a tight game here with that technical for the fist pump in the air, you have to be mindful that if you do call that second technical, time and place, you're going to lose the guy who was scoring an average of 31 points in the bubble, which is wildly impactful to the outcome of the game, even if the quality of it was still pretty good.
Well, it sounds like you're saying that it impacted the game to such an extent that maybe the ending was changed, maybe it wasn't, but it impacted the game. Clinton Yates, I'll bring you in here. Did the refs rob Dallas and everybody of a game here?
I don't think they robbed everybody, but they did rob Dallas in a certain way. However, are we just going to overlook the fact that Luka Doncic scored the NBA record for a playoff debut? I mean, the previous record was 20 years before he was even born. So it's not like we were completely just overlooked as far as what we got as a fan, but I think that Pablo is partially right here. The thing is this. Porzingis admitted that he knew he was wrong in the situation. So that makes it difficult to say that the refs were wrong in sort of adjudicating this the way that they did. I don't happen to believe that every single person that enters a fray when something is going on is an escalator. And if you saw how Marcus Morris reacted, he just walked away instantly. So obviously he didn't escalate anything. But I do understand why, because he had the first one, they said, yo, man, get out of here. This is what you're not supposed to be doing if you know you're going to get tossed. It was not a smart play by Kristaps at all. And he admitted as such after the game.
Frank, do you have a takeaway from game one here? What Doncic did, as Clinton just said, the best debut game for a 21-year-old, by the way, in NBA playoffs history, or what the Clippers were able to do?
Well, the Clippers held on, but, 42 points. He also had 11 turnovers, which was big. One thing about Porzingis not really complaining after the game, that was a smart thing to do. Not even Mark Cuban, who loves to complain about the referee, was complaining about it afterwards. It was only one game. I thought Dallas, and that must have come down from Rick Carlisle, Donnie Nelson, and Mark Cuban. There's no sense complaining about it. Let's move on to game two.
Pablo, any part of you thinking, well, Doncic could do that. Maybe you could do that any night. And if you have Porzingis for a full game, this is a series here. Any part of you?
Absolutely. The Dallas offense, guys, is the most efficient offense in the history of basketball. The reason the Clippers have been so heavily favored is because they have all-world defenders everywhere. But if they can't stop Doncic, then this is absolutely a toss-up of a series.
Well, didn't we see that at the start of the game? They're down 10 immediately, and then they're up
16.
By 16 about 10 minutes of real time later. We'll put a book note in this one. We'll move on to another incredible performance in a loss. Let's talk about Donovan Mitchell. Where is 57 points all time? It's third. The third highest scoring game in NBA playoff history. And look at this trend. Jordan had 63, he lost. Baylor had 61, he lost. We just talked about Doncic's 42 in the debut, he lost. And Mitchell yesterday. The 8-second violation with a minute left in regulation. This is where the whole game maybe turned, and Mitchell took the blame for that. Pablo Torre, around the horn to you. Can Mitchell honestly take blame? In a game, he scored 57?
Not for that part. I'll be honest here. I totally forgot about that because what happened next was so mind-blowing. Because if Donovan Mitchell wants to take any sort of fault for anything that happened in this game, it was the fact that the guy he was ostensibly matched up with, Jamal Murray, proceeded to score 18 points after that violation in question through overtime, which outscored the entirety of the Utah Jazz. So blame yourself for not slowing down your counterpart, but that particular butterfly effect sort of a moment, yeah, that's not the thing that I take away from this game.
Ooh, Pablo is cold here. So you would argue Jamal Murray's game was better than Donovan Mitchell's, or more impactful, as you like to say?
He closed it out, Tony. The impact was self-evident by the end of it.
Clinton Yates, how about you?
Even though I think Jamal Murray is the most underrated player in the NBA, even Jamal Murray doesn't think that he was the most impactful person in that game. All he could talk about afterward was Spider Mitchell. He talked about it on the court. He talked about it out of the court, in the bubble, watching him eat dinner. So, no, I'm not saying that Murray had the best game, but I am not going to kill Donovan Mitchell for this. It was a mental mistake. You saw what he was doing in terms of filling it up, and he kept that game tight for the Jazz. Things happen. We talk about teams that don't know how to win and have to learn to get to the next level in the NBA. These are the kinds of things that we're talking about when we refer to that.
Frank Isola, I'm interested in your Pablo Torre response, whether Jamal Murray had the better game than Donovan Mitchell, but also can Mitchell take and accept blame here for a game he scored 57 in? Because
Jamal Murray was more clutch, that's for sure. Here's the thing, Tony. J.R. Smith was involved in one of the more infamous plays in NBA Finals history because he forgot the time and the score. Poor Chris Webber, as a college student, called timeout when Michigan didn't have one. That was a brilliant performance by Donovan Mitchell, but when you're a superstar player, and he was an all-star this year, you have the ball up for a minute 46 seconds to go. You cannot get called for an 8-second violation when you're not even being pressured. Within 21 seconds of that violation, the score was tied, and Jamal Murray had hit back-to-back three-pointers. That was a colossal mistake, and Donovan Mitchell admitted it after the game. If Scottie Pippen had made that mistake, Michael Jordan would have another documentary about The Last Dance with Scottie Pippen. So Donovan Mitchell had a great game. That was a huge blunder for a great player.
Oh, boy. Oh, Scotty's at home watching like, come on, Frank, what are you bringing me up for? So wait,
Michael Jordan.
The 57 points means nothing to you, Frank? The third highest scoring playoff game in history means nothing because of a colossal mistake, as you said?
Well, remember, Michael Jordan holds the record, and in the 61 that he scored against Boston, the Bulls lost that game. So, yes, it was an unbelievable performance. But to Pablo's point, look at when Jamal Murray scored his points. He was more clutch, and the two big threes after the 8-second violation changed everything about that game and maybe will change the series.
It's like the other side of the coin of that question I asked as a follow-up. In the last series, Dallas didn't have Porzingis, and they were close the entire game, and Dodgers got what he wanted. Clinton, does this make you think that Utah, if they can't win when Mitchell has 57, how are they going to win this series?
I know, it's going to be really tough. I mean, I do think Denver is a better team, and Jokic was a guy who, again, contributed and distributed all over the place. It wasn't like Murray was the only one playing. I think this is going to be another one of those close ones where Denver pulls out probably in 5, but each game is tight. I don't think that the Jazz, though, however, have what it takes to match up against the Nuggets.
All right, we move on to tonight, Houston and OKC. That's a good one, and maybe the most anticipated 1 versus 8 matchup ever. Lakers, are they vulnerable? The Blazers, are they America's team? Have they figured it out? Frank, you saw an 8-over-1 up close like eons ago, back when the Knicks used to play basketball in a shortened season. What will it take for Portland to do that?
Well, here's the issue with Portland. If they took the 4 of us, and we'll take our producer, Josh Bard, we could probably score 120 points against Portland. They just try to outscore everybody. They don't defend if their lives depended on it. Now you got LeBron and Anthony Davis. I think Portland, because Damian Lillard is on such a great roll, I believe they can take 2 games off of the Lakers. 4, you're going to have a hard time convincing me of that.
Is there a path to victory here, though? You mentioned LeBron and Davis. Who do they have to cover them? Well, what about their backcourt? Portland's backcourt. Who's the Lakers you're going to use to cover Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum?
No, that's a great point, and you're not going to have the experience of Rondo, the big game experience. And now this is where not having Avery Bradley, who decided not to go down to the Orlando bubble, is going to hurt them. That's a great point, because if there comes a time when LeBron has to guard Damian Lillard, remember, 1 day off in between games, so that could catch up to LeBron.
Pablo, let's enter it this way, all right? You got Damian Lillard, you got C.J. McCollum. Trent Jr. doesn't miss a three-pointer at all. So you're in Damian Lillard's recording studio, it looks like right now. Does Portland have a shot here?
They have a shot if C.J. McCollum's back, which, by the way, last I checked, is still broken in some fashion, can hold up. If you can get that backcourt to be as good as their ceiling is, plus you throw in some magical pixie dust of Carmelo Anthony, I think they can take 2 games like Frank says. But if C.J. McCollum is in fact a mortal human being, LeBron James, guys, LeBron James is 13-0 in his entire life in the first round of the playoffs. I don't foresee this broken Portland team changing that at all.
All right, so you're giving him 2 games at most. If you got 2 games, you got nothing. You need 4 here. Let's go to Clinton Yates.
You know, Jeff Van Gundy said he thought it was as likely that the Blazers could get swept as it is that they end up upsetting the Lakers.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people looked over that point. This is going to be a tight series. I think the Blazers are going to stick with the Lakers in every single manner because of what you said. Dame looks great. The Lakers have questions in terms of the third. People out here are talking about the words playoff coups, which is just not a real thing overall. So I do believe that the Blazers have a chance. I just don't think that it's necessarily going to mean that they're going to blow out the Lakers on any given chance. It's going to be 4 tight games, but I do think Van Gundy has a point there. They could end up just losing them all because of the LeBron factor.
All right. Nobody. It sounds like nobody's giving him a chance, honestly. If you're going to tell me it's going to be close, they're going to lose 4 straight games, you're not giving him a chance.
No.
If you're going to tell me, they might be able to get 2, you're not giving him a chance.
Oh, no. Look, there's still a team
chance.
that was in the Western Conference Finals recently. It's not as if there's some bum squad. Zach Collins isn't playing, which is a disaster.
You just said they were getting swept in 4 games. Take the button to turn off the microphone. Real quick, since we're talking about chances, here's a second chance. Carmelo was saved by LeBron at the beach. You heard LeBron say this, Clinton. LeBron saved his life at the beach. What is that?
I love this. He's reminding people that back when we weren't social distancing, he was still getting it done in terms of what's called clutch. I'm a big fan of this head game from LeBron.
You didn't just call it a head game. What did you call it? Give me the exact wording on it. You called it a God head game because he's giving life back. That's what you called it, man. Oh, man. All right, we got to take a break here. When we come back, baseball telling its most exciting player, please don't swing. Don't swing. It would be against the unwritten rules. Just an interesting strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for them. Baseball, we're going to talk Tatis, but I need to start with this. The Tatises, all they do is hit grand slams. Dad hit 2 in the same inning, greatest inning in baseball history, and now Junior off to the greatest start ever, 11 home runs in 23 games. The 3-run home run he hit yesterday made it 10-3. And then in the 8th, you can see it. It's 10-3. It's a 3-0 count, grand slam. Rangers unhappy. He swung at a 3-0 pitch. They showed it by throwing a rock behind Manny Machado in the next at bat. Rangers manager Chris Woodward said it after the game. Not a good time to swing. It's the kind of the way we were raised in the game. Padres manager Jace Tingler, in agreement with Woodward, said there was a take sign that Tatis missed. Tatis apologized. And here we are for the millionth time. But it feels like general public is increasingly thinking this is ludicrous for baseball not to want to have a guy try and swing, but a vocal majority of people who play the game disagree. Clinton Yates, what to buy, what to sell?
Let me read to you the words of one Howard Joseph Kendrick, whose work you might be familiar with from what's behind me. He says, I would never apologize for going deep on 3-0 or any other count. We are there on the field to play baseball, which is exactly what this is. It doesn't make any sense, never mind on the field, but the internal logic of handling things on the field is very simple. You handle it there. You don't talk about it after the game or do 9 other things. And here's the other thing that I don't understand. He hit 2 bombs to go ahead of Mike Trout on the list for those who have the most homers in the league so far. You might want to pay attention to that too. This kid is too good to be worrying about this kind of crap because it's stupid and we all know it, including those in the bigs.
So Tatis apologizing, how did that strike you, Clinton?
It strikes me as completely ridiculous, and if you want to get into the cultural norms of who grew up around the game, don't tell me Fernando Tatis Jr. didn't, because we all know who his dad is as well. This doesn't even make any sense. It just has to do with people who are being red asses on the field because they don't like it when dudes are better than they are, and it's bad for the game. Don't get me started.
Frank Isola.
Yeah, I'm the batter, you're the pitcher. Get me out. I hate all these unwritten rules. If he had hit the grand slam and he's taken about a minute to go around the bases, that's one thing. You're disrespecting the opponent. his job is to hit. The game is for the fans, and sometimes the players in baseball and their union and the commissioner need to remember that. This is a terrific young player. Let him hit a grand slam, get him out. All these unwritten rules, some of them are absurd. And by the way, Tony, you can come back from that many runs. That's how miracles happen in sports. So keep playing until the last out. How about that for an idea?
Right.
That's a good rule.
There's incontrovertible evidence from this weekend.
Right.
Exhibit
Oakland
A.
A's.
They were down 5 in the ninth inning. They're hitting grand slams. Pablo Torre, when you hear his own manager, the opposing manager, players, teammates in his dugout are ripping him out as well, what do you think?
I think that the unwritten rules, I thought, were about effort. The whole thing about, like, the unfair rap so many players from the DR have taken, it's because, allegedly, they can lollygag sometimes, running to first base on these balls that are really ultimately inconsequential. Well, here's the exact opposite lesson, which must be confusing to somebody who is trying really hard at another point in the game to be the best baseball player that he can. And Tony, the apology from Tatis, I understand that his manager worked for the Rangers manager, so there is some diplomacy here, but this guy, man, he is the answer to the fact that Mike Trout doesn't like to market himself. Fernando Tatis and his personality is the answer to baseball prayers, but here they are throwing cold water all over it.
I'll tell you something else. Something that didn't rub me exactly the right way was Woodward saying, this is how we were raised in the game. Tatis Jr. wasn't raised in the game as well. Hello. I mean, his father played a decade in Major League Baseball. I heard that from Billy Ripken on MLB Network. I come from a baseball family. Hello, so does Tatis, and this is how he plays the game. We'll move on. Buy or sell to college football. How does UNC have 177 positive tests on campus and go to online classes? How's that going to affect the football season? Well, it's not going to affect it. They're going to go on. Football goes on. Buy or sell, Pablo?
I will sell all the stock that exists as the fall football because it's not just all of those cases, Tony. They had to quarantine 350 students. And so once that happens, you have to realize this is untenable, not merely because college is college. It's because the college itself is not isolated from the rest of the world. Even if we pretend that baseball and football players can isolate themselves, proof has shown us that the spread to the community is another issue. So I just don't see how this is sustainable in any way, moral or logistical.
Glenn Yates?
I'm selling the final results here, but I did talk to UNC AD Bubba Cunningham last week about this, and here was his logic. We got 19,000 kids on campus, we've got 800 student athletes, and we've got the best medical system, hospitals-wise, in the state. I just believe that they think they can handle this, that they can isolate it well enough. I don't personally think that's the smartest strategy, but I understand what they're going for there because they got more than just football in the fall. They've got a world-class, women's soccer team there as well. So I don't love it, but I think they all have a strategy involved, which we'll see if it works.
ACC moving forward. SEC released their schedule. You may have saw Saban on Get Up today saying spring is not an option because everybody's going to opt out. So he's kind of pressing this forward as well. What do you think of it, Frank?
Well, I think the whole thing of spring, guys opt out of bowl games, so that's ridiculous. Unless you'll get guys that are going to the NFL that opt out. As for what North Carolina is doing, now that you're having online classes, if you're the football coach, why not say, I want to get my entire team, which is probably about 100 guys, into some kind of bubble? Now it's actually easier to do. Of course, on Friday and Saturday night, you kind of cross your fingers that not everybody's going out, because that's when the problems will start.
Frank, would you say you're opting out of Showdown? How you see it?
It's like a bowl game. It's like the Peach Bowl. I'll opt out.
Isola still hasn't won since we went to quarantine. Amazing. What a drought. We'll move on. Showdown in 2 minutes. Pablo Torre, Clinton Yates. Clinton Yates, Pablo Torre, good luck in Showdown. Seager versus Seager for the first time ever last night. They never played each other. And both hit home runs. 10th time in Major League history, brothers hit home runs in the same game as opponents. It's happened a few more times as teammates. There was a great reaction here. What's the best brother moment in baseball history, Pablo Torre?
It has to be 2011 Hollywood, Florida, Tony, but it wasn't baseball. It was boxing. It was Jose and Ozzie Canseco. Ozzie tried to sub in to a celebrity fight for Jose, didn't have the tattoos Jose had, was thrown out for that reason. Best brother moment in baseball history.
This is not nearly
Yates, do you have an
as good
answer?
as an actual brother versus brother, which were the Negroes when Joe homered off his own brother Phil.
That's a great one.
There is nothing.
That's an
better than
all-time
that.
one.
Come on.
I thought Ken Boyer and Cleve Boyer doing it in Game 7 of the World Series in '64 was the best. But you got it, Clinton Yates. Point to you. Showdown 2. Rob Gronkowski is in New England shape. not Florida shape, according to Bruce Arians, whose beard is in North Pole shape. Okay for Arians to call out Gronk?
Yes, I love the idea of this. Obviously, this is probably in good fun just to jam it to him and Tom Brady. I just like the idea of him being out there in a Kangol with no shirt on, getting it in on Gronk, telling him he needs to get in shape. This is funny all around. I love it.
How dare Bruce Arians call into question Gronk's Florida man credentials? No one has more Magic Mike energy than Rob Gronkowski. The idea that that guy isn't suited for Florida is absurd.
Everything you said is 100% true, Pablo, but you invoked Jose and Ozzie Canseco previously. You cannot win a show with that. Take it, Clinton Yates.
The Washington football franchise hired a man named Jason Wright as their president. He's the first black president in NFL history, and a lot of people are quick to give that franchise a lot of credit for it, but let me tell you something. That is not the case for me, because I am not giving the benefit of the doubt to any operation that Daniel M. Snyder owns, simply for one reason. Think of the last time that a non-mistake was not corrected and they just thought of an idea, executed it, and ended it well. Just think of it. It hasn't happened. You don't get the benefit of the doubt. I know that he's a good guy. I know that he's probably good for the job, and the NFL wants him there, but that don't mean it's going to work out, because Snyder is the problem there and always will be.
Clinton Yates, today's champion, is career win number 62.
Ooh.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Frankie. Frankie's still on the schneid. We'll see you guys tomorrow around the horn.
Pick it up, Frank.
Can't win.
He's won like 6 times. I'm totally making that up.